Jai Shri Krishna. Today's video is a very important one, and it is about the future of the present terrible situation that is going on in the Middle East, especially in Israel and Palestine. And terrorism and violence have reached their peak in this area, and thousands of people have already died, and many of them are children. Nearly half of the casualties are children, and it is very heartbreaking to read the news of this massive outburst of negative energy in that region. And first of all, the terrorism and violence that has been going on must be condemned, irrespective of who is doing it. Whoever perpetrates violence, whoever perpetrates burning of other people's area, whoever perpetrates the killing of children and the killing of civilians should be condemned, and be it any party in this particular conflict, they must be condemned. The whole act of violence must be condemned, irrespective of the reasons, the motivation, and any other factor involved. And I strongly stand by that, and I just pray for peace to come. But this video is not to discuss the political aspects of this alone, but to discuss the astrological bearings of this and what will happen in the future of this particular conflict and what will happen in the very near future. This video is going to cover most of the subjects relating to this, and in case some stones are left untouched, we will look at them in our next video, which will come very soon. So first of all, I've received a lot of questions since the last video, which was posted on the 4th of October, a few days before the conflict, predicting major terrorist attack to occur, and I've received a couple of questions on how astrology could predict this with the accuracy down to the location as well as the date, and also the scale of the attack, which was compared to 9/11. So the location was marked inside the danger zone, and there have been a couple of questions about how this was marked and what was this formation exactly. And for those who are new to Jyotisha, I would like to explore this. Of late, a lot of people have got more interest in the science of astrology owing to the predictions, which are generally treated with wonder by the people. I would like to demystify some of this and explain what led me to predict this particular situation during this particular period. So first of all, let us explain this particular combination. What is this combination and what does it mean? For those who are new to Jyotish, this might look like some kind of a drawing and it might be kind of difficult to understand, but I'd like to elaborate on this, and there will be more videos on what this is and how I calculate these positions and what I'm looking at when I look at the skies. When you study astronomy at school, I haven't been to the traditional, so-called modern schooling system much of the time. So I have studied in the, Vedic system partly and at home, and mostly by self-study. So my way of looking at the skies is very much Oriental and very much Vedic in nature. I look at the skies in terms of Jyotish rather than just bland astronomy, although I do recognize the importance of astronomy in making calculations or even predictions. Now, when this particular combination came into picture, in the skies, based on Jyotish or Vedic astrology, we look at the skies in terms of what it looks like from here, not what it is supposed to look like in the solar system, because what is important to us humans is what position is present here, now, and as we are seeing it on Earth. So I'd like to make that clear first, and that is what this entire diagram is based on. Now, when Jupiter, Moon and Rahu come together, let me just get down to the karakattvas or the characteristics of these grahas. Some of you might think, how can this big ball of gas cause a terrorist attack on Earth? And how can Mars, a barren, whirling ball, cause aggression on Earth? So I'd like to explain this. First of all, these grahas are not just inanimate objects as some people claim, whirling in the skies. They are full of consciousness. They are full of Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, Brahma, which pervades the entire universe, truthfulness, knowledge, and consciousness. At the deeper level, that is what they have. They are not inanimate to start with. And secondly, because they are part of this material manifestation of this universe, they have their own qualities, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. and each of these grahas has their own distinct qualities within the sattva, rajas and tamas, which makes them really special. Now, without going into detailed facts about this, which will be covered in different videos, with more information and more knowledge and more wisdom on these subjects directly from the scriptures, I'd like to get down to the fact. Mars or Kuja or Bhauma in Vedic Jyotisha is considered to be the graha which controls the human spirit of aggression, and even any animal spirit of aggression, any organism spirit of aggression, the spirit of courage, the spirit of valor, all of these. In the positive side, it's valor, it's courage, it's bravery. On the negative side, it's aggression, violence and terrorism. These are ruled by Bhauma or Kuja. The very act of striking fear onto somebody else comes when Saturn and Kuja come together. I'll explain why exactly Saturn is related to fear and fear-mongering and terrorism. But now coming down to this, Ketu is isolationism. Ketu is the southern node of the moon, and it was very, very close to Mars on the day when this conflict erupted. To be more precise, the previous day when it reached the peak. The negative energy of Ketu and Mars basically got too close to each other in a deep conjunction on the 6th of October 2023, one day before the conflict erupted. And now Ketu is basically isolationism, depression and aggression. And that combined with Mars results in a tectonic explosion of human aggression. And on the other hand side, we have Rahu. Rahu is of course known as the master conjurer, and it results in this intense intense dialogue within the mind of what to do and what not to do. And Jupiter shows the human spirits of morality. But when the human spirits of morality are corrupted, Jupiter is Guru, the human spirits of morality are corrupted by Rahu, which is the master conjurer, the magician, which basically plays on the minds of humans and converts the spirits of morality to something subverted, something violent and something confounded. And when moon comes together there, moon is the mind, and I shall explain why in another video in detail, but the moon is the mind because it has intense connection to the mind. It wanes and it waxes. It is known to be fickle in almost all scriptures related to Jyotish Shastra. And when Rahu and the moon come together, the master conjurer's effect is in full display. Now when Jupiter, Rahu and moon come together, the human spirits of morality and religion on one side might be positive. But when Rahu comes together, it subverts them to the total opposite direction and creates an effect totally opposite to what the individual desired. Morality, righteousness gets subverted into egotistic and dangerous violence and aggression. That's exactly what happened during this particular period. So this is the same combination that occurred during 9/11. I would like to reiterate this fact that I discussed earlier in my video on the 4th of October, a few days before this conflict erupted. And today it is widely recognized as none other than 7/10 of Israel. The Israelis call this their 7/10, just like 9/11. And I believe that this is because the same combination that I just mentioned here now, very similar to this, occurred during 9/11, and that kicked off an era of anti-terrorism and, as I mentioned earlier, an era of extreme violence, an era of revenge. Basically, the force of revenge is also evident in this combination, and Israel's actions are no less terrifying overall. And I believe that the revenge will be worse than the initial conflict, which is already getting to. Without getting into what is right or wrong in this particular circumstance politically, I would like to say morally, violence is always wrong, especially violence that is directed towards the weak. But of course, the situation is so bad that one cannot even point out what is happening and what should happen, because after all, what is happening is part of the great grand plan of the Supreme probably, and we just have to let go of it, because otherwise such combinations cannot even be understood through astrology. It is part of the fate of that particular region. But I wish and I hope that this does not happen once again, and that people come together and bring about more peaceful situations. Try to understand who we are. We are not defined by our boundaries. I'd like to explain this later, but yes, we are not defined by these human-made boundaries of nations, and of when it comes to the ultimate reality, all of this just does not exist. All that exists is Satyam, Jnanam, Anantam, that is truth, knowledge and love, and all of these material manifestations they create these distinctions, and that creates violence and aggression and all of these unwanted human negative emotions, the display of these, which borders with those of demons. Now, going ahead with this coincides with important astrological combinations related to the founding of Islam as well. Now, coming to the third reason why this happened, we looked at the similarities between 9/11 and 7/10. We also looked at the similarities between, the positions in that particular time frame and now. We also looked at the Ketu and Mars conjunction that occurred, the Ketu and Kuja conjunction that occurred on the 6th of October, which preceded the attack by a couple of hours. And now we're going to look at the founding of Islam. This might be a controversial subject, but I'd like to touch upon this because it's my duty as an astrologer, and it is important to point this out, and it is also part of my free speech to speak about this particular subject. When different countries and different people and different intellectuals from different parts of the world can voice their opinions on other religions, I think I can also do very well the same for a very important reason here. And now, the year 610 was when Islam was founded by most historical records, which are quite accurate. And taking the positions of that particular year, when that particular year began, I can very clearly say that Saturn and Jupiter were in a great conjunction when Islam was founded, in the very nakshatra that Saturn is traveling now, Shatabishak. For those of you who are familiar with my videos, I've talked about Shatabishak nakshatra, what it is. It is the nakshatra of Rahu, and that is when Islam was founded in the year 610. And Jupiter and Saturn, I'd like to reiterate, were in a great conjunction the very same year, which was followed by an intense period of the spread of Islam as well as the spread of violence throughout the world, and a lot of polarity and a lot of dangerous situations, which of course we cannot blame just on Islam. Islam in its true philosophical essence is very different from what happened after 610. And the way the religious fanaticism evolved and how it usurped the whole world, and what all happened during that time frame, unspeakable violence, great massacres, and much more. So Rahu, Jupiter, Saturn, Venus, Mars, and Ketu. Whenever the essential positions of 610 come back, we have boom, jihad. And jihad, or this principle of waging violence on religious or philosophical opponents, is a really concerning factor, and it started off in those days. And I'd like to make a separate video on exactly how this manifested overall, but I believe that it is basically a combination of different events. It is not only to do with a particular sect of people or a particular race, but it is a general ideology that finds its roots in specific planetary positions, and not only limited to Islam, but several other religions in the world and several other sects of violence which have spread through violence are also affected by these specific planetary positions. Even specific sects in Christianity, specific tamasic sects, although they are a minority in Bharat, for example, specific black magic related worship also spread through violence and human sacrifice and animal sacrifice. So all those were really dark periods. They were not part of Sanatana Dharma, but in general all the religious fringe elements which rely on conversion of other people in order to further their religion, all of these elements are ruled by the combinations which I just mentioned earlier. So now this cycle of jihad, I just like to give a few examples, but there are lots more of examples which I have with me on paper, and I would like to discuss it in a separate video. 1024, when there was the first jihad in our country. 1527, when there was another major jihad by the Islamist kings which entered the country, and the jihadists who destroyed the temples of Sanatana Dharma, and who broke down the Somnath temple, and who also broke down several other major temples in our country, who killed more than 30,000 people in our country, massacred them, including women and children, and other dark periods of history which cannot be just brushed off so easily. All of this has a clear astrological indication behind each, and I can state this very clearly. And not only that, in recent years also we have some good examples. 1993, the first year when Islamist terrorism or jihadist terrorism entered or say radical Islam. I would not blame the true Islam, the philosophical Islam, because it is just an offshoot of Sanatana Dharma. That's all it is. Maybe misunderstood, misappropriated, but it is an offshoot of Sanatana Dharma. Islam essentially means surrendering, just surrendering to the Supreme, and surrendering to the Supreme has always been an essential part of Sanatana Dharma. And if you limit it to the surrendering to the Supreme and the love for the Supreme, then Islam is nothing but a misunderstood offshoot of Sanatana Dharma, in my humble opinion. And 1993, coming back to the subject, when terrorism first entered US soil and blew up the World Trade Center, Shani was transiting through the very same nakshatra that it is transiting through now. And 2001, again we had a very similar position to what we have at the present moment. And 2023, again, of course, as we all know, it has repeated. And this is a very vicious cycle, and lots more is to come. The whole world needs to be on alert over the next couple of months, especially. And I already in my previous video I've mentioned Bharat. I'd like to touch upon that as well. But there's going to be an anti-terror war that's going to begin in the Middle East region, and which is going to be quite dangerous for the Middle East as well as the countries around the Middle East and the people, the populace around that region. And even the Israeli state is also likely to be a bad actor in this particular situation, increasing violence further. All of these problems are likely to happen. And I'd like to also touch upon an important subject which a lot of people generally tend to overlook. 9/11 was a result of a blowback, when the US CIA has been alleged to fund Osama bin Laden, and then it emerged as a blowback, and it all just blew back on the innocent citizens of the United States, and unfortunately 9/11 occurred. Similarly, Israel has been proven by several sources to have funded the terrorist organization it is fighting against today, Hamas. It has itself funded the organization on several accounts. For those of you who'd like to verify this once again, please do so on the internet. So the blowback incident happens again when Rahu and Jupiter come together. A blowback is nothing but creating danger for yourself. It just comes back to you once again. Rahu is basically a retrograde graha, and I'd like people to emphasize and understand this concept clearly, not shifting the whole blame on the jihadists, although of course there's a big part there as well. But we are supposed to understand that Rahu is a retrograde graha. So what you create comes back to you, and that's what Israel has been doing, and that has hit it back again now, totally by surprise. Or really, sometimes Rahu is so much of a tricky magician that you really cannot say whether it was by surprise or whether it was meticulously planned, etc. Now, another turning point in the history of radical Islam starts now. One of the major turning points was the year 1610. Now this is another major point in the turning, in the history of radical Islam. And this is based on the theory which I have partly promulgated through, the scriptures, and as well as historical research and astrological research. If countries, as most of our viewers conversant with our videos in the past would be aware, I've mentioned a 400-year period of prosperity and decline for countries, a maximum lifespan of prosperity in most cases of 400 years, a continuous line of prosperity, and a cycle of 120 years lifespan for human beings, and similarly lesser cycles for lower forms of life like animals, etc. And a 2000-year period of prosperity for religious beliefs. And I'd like this point to be emphasized further. Every religious belief system which actually aims at expansion and prosperity, Islam does fall into this category, wherein the leaders of the religion do try to convert others and try to expand their power, and they do it in the name of religion. So this kind of religious prosperity has an unusually long lifespan of 2000 years. So Islam is likely to continue for a significantly long period, even from now. It's not likely to end as some people claim. But at the same time, it's at a turning point of decline, that is for sure. And I am not at all going to be taking back this particular statement. And I do believe this is so. This is based on solely astrological understanding, because 610 was when it was formed. 1610 is one of the turning points, and this is one of the other turning points. Of course, I do not defend Israel. entirely. Israel's actions are no less cruel. Of course, we cannot, blame Israel for its actions entirely, but the cruelty must stop as soon as possible. And now the most important question is, what about Bharat? Bharatavarsha is now at the cusp of major transformation, which I've talked about a few months ago itself. We are at the cusp of major transformation. We have been rising tremendously, under the present combinations, the planetary combinations, as well as the political combinations. What about Bharat? This is the most important question I've been asked, and I had also mentioned Bharat as a hotspot of violence in a video earlier around June of this year, and also again in this video on the 4th of October before the present terrorist attack. But since there has already been a very major attack on Israel, I believe that the short-term risks are minimized, and there's not likely to be a very severe problem similar to that what is happening in Israel in our country in the short term. But there is a very grave danger till April of 2024. There's a likelihood of a foreign conspiracy against our country, and I'm just reiterating, this has already been mentioned in my previous videos. I'm just reiterating this fact: there is a major conspiracy, a major foreign conspiracy against the country, and the leadership needs to be careful, the military needs to be careful. And after October 28 and before May of 2024 is the most crucial time frame. Anything could happen during this time frame. I'll try my best to narrow it down further and give the locations. A disturbing trend is that, just like 1993, we're likely to face another situation once again, because again the astrological positions are getting very disturbingly similar. It's eerily similar. I would like to repeat, quoting from my description of the previous video. Centers of fun, creativity, finance and industry need to be very careful. Places like theaters, parks, public places and places of enjoyment in general need to be very careful. And also the southeastern direction needs to be careful. The western and northeastern direction needs to be very careful. And presently the government unfortunately is just focusing on security in major areas like Delhi and Mumbai, but not focusing on the most other very important areas as well, apart from Mumbai and Delhi, which are emerging as major sectors in our country. The southeastern part of our country, including the state of Tamil Nadu, as well as the northeastern portion of our country, are susceptible to danger, not only from jihadists but also from our northeastern neighbor China. And people need to be really careful about these aspects. And this is my prediction for the upcoming few months. And I'd like to again emphasize that this entire period that we are going through is one of massive transformation. It's a 20-year, it's actually a 400-year, or in some cases we can even say an 800-year transformation. Something that the world has never seen before is just about to happen, and all of these events are just runner-up events. This entire period, even the next 1 year, of course this particular conflict is going to stretch for a minimum of 1 year, since Jupiter is involved and Jupiter's transits take 1 year. So the entire period signals great cruelty, human rights abuse and extreme bloodshed, unfortunately. And this war is likely to go on for a minimum of 1 year in different ways, and it's a runner-up to a greater conflict. That is between 2029 and 2032. It's just a runner-up, my dear friends, and we must pray with all our efforts throughout the world for peace. And if humans come together and pray, the power of prayer is the most powerful thing, and we can alter the course of history if we really do so with all intent. And at least we can save the poor innocent people, and who are not having any active stake in this particular conflict, who are not a part of any kind of conflict but who are being affected, like the poor civilians in Russia and Ukraine, the poor people who are being innocently affected, in Kashmir, in Bharat, because of the horrible incursions by again the people in the northwest, not the people in the northwest but the government in the northwest, Pakistan, and so many more problems that we are facing in the world. We must pray for peace. I'd like to reiterate the prayer which I said in our video on the 4th of October once again. Asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritangamaya, om shanti shanti shanti. Let there be peace. Ahimsa paramo dharmaha, ahimsa paramam satyam, ahimsa paramam tapah. Hari Om. Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Ramachandra. And just before I complete with this video, I'd like to emphasize one of my most important messages that are right from the scriptures of ancient Bharat, and this is that violence is like a boomerang. You throw it and you get it back. We humans are slaughtering billions and trillions of animals every single day. We are killing them, we are murdering them in cold blood, and we expect peace. That is utter hypocrisy. It's hypocrisy of the highest sort. I'm really appalled as to why humans are unable to realize this great blunder. It's probably again a very big cosmic story, but in our interest as souls seeking to move forward in our spiritual existence, we must abhor, we must stop all kinds of violence meted out against animals, or else we must experience the same ourselves. It's my earnest request to all of you, those of you who are still continuing as non-vegetarians, to please reconsider and please think of the animals that are suffering the violence and the karma that you're passing on to your generations, to yourself and to your future. Your life doesn't end. Your existence doesn't end with this particular birth. It continues in subsequent births, and that is the eternal truth. No matter which religion you believe in, that is the eternal truth. So I would recommend that all of you please try to spread peace, not through just words and typing out on social media platforms, but in your home, in your kitchen to start with, and wherever you go, with your body, with your mind, try to spread peace. And thank you so much. Jai Shri Krishna. And also I am very much happy to see that a lot of people have turned vegetarian over the last few weeks, especially after our videos and posts, etc. We have seen a lot of people in the comment section as well, overwhelmingly in support of ahimsa and Sanatana Dharma, and I really thank you all for this great effort, and you are doing a lot to protect the world from misery. At least in your ways, you're doing a lot, and it goes a long way. Actually speaking, it is a folly to think that these kind of things, these kind of small changes in your kitchen and your dietary habits don't have a big effect on the world. It does have a big effect, because after all, the microcosm is the macrocosm. And thank you so much. Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Shri Ramachandra, Jai Shri Lakshmi Narasimha.